Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had an interview with my good friend Han Joon Lee, who teaches TOEFL preparation out of Korea, and it was a really big hit. So I thought I would invite him back, and we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about how he prepares students for the TOEFL test. Welcome back to the channel.
Oh, hey, thanks again for having me.
Now, we'll get right to it. When we talked last time, you had just taken the brand new enhanced TOEFL test, and you were still waiting for your results. Those results have come in. Can you tell us how you scored on that test?
Yes, I took two tests. One got 119 and the other got 118 for some reason.
Basically, you got 119 points. Then you took it again and you got 118 points. So those are really good. Those are really good results. Now, just to be clear, are you a native English speaker?
No.
Did you go to university in the United States?
Nope, but I did live in the States for 3 years when I was a kid, so that
Okay.
matters.
What age did you live there?
In kindergarten.
In kindergarten. Okay, so you did do most of your schooling in Korea.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's possible, right, for a non-native speaker who did most of their education outside of an English-speaking country to get really high TOEFL scores, right?
Yep. But I did study a lot like after college or in college, so yeah, that matters.
Yeah, right. I mean, studying matters. I mean, the amount of time we kind of put into learning these languages, I guess, helps quite a lot in the long run. So, as I said, you teach TOEFL preparation to people in Korea. How long have you been doing that?
Around 11 years, I think.
Okay. And why? I don't know if we touched on it last time, but why did you kind of get into that line of work? What drew you
That's
to
a
that?
very interesting topic. But to be really frank, I thought it was more fun than just working at Samsung or something. And I didn't want to actually enter that kind of competition because I knew that I had to kind of almost kill myself, like just studying the random stuff that I didn't want to work there. And there's so many talented people out there as well. And the education industry just didn't feel like there was much competition. And I saw my previous TOEFL teacher who wasn't like that good. He was making like 30 grand a month. I was like, what? like I can do better than that. And that's what happened, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Not
I guess.
financial life, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that it's enjoyable. Yeah, there are a lot of, especially like around like 2011. I think I kind of got into teaching TOEFL around the same time. I think the very first time, probably like 2009. And then I was probably doing it like on a more full-time basis around 2011. And yeah, especially back then, there were a lot of people kind of making a lot of money doing some pretty mediocre test preparation.
Exactly.
So
That is the exact same like time frame when I did my admissions. So yeah.
Yeah. So you had firsthand experience perhaps with some test preparation of various types, right?
Not various types. I just went to one place, but yeah, kind of, I guess.
How many tests were you preparing for, though, for your own admission?
So I needed 117, and I never received like proper feedback on my writing or speaking. They just said it was good. I thought that's how it was back then. Like seriously, they would look at my essay for like 10 seconds. I was like, okay, good job. That's the only feedback I got. Okay.
Yeah.
And they never, touched them on my accent or pronunciation. Nothing. I was like, I'm always getting 27 to 28, sometimes 29s on speaking. Never got a 30. I had no idea what this was. But when I listened to previous recordings now, I can see how terrible I was back then. But anyhow, most things. So yeah.
Yeah. So so it does seem like the preparation and the tutoring you were getting, like a lot of people, wasn't great. It was probably also quite expensive, I bet.
That's also the reason why I started. I didn't want people to go through the same kind of stuff I had to go through. Just make the whole process like 10 times faster. Because I had to solve like almost every single test prep material on the market back then, at least. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, almost
and a lot of them. So what were you using, like official prep material or like third-party stuff? What was common then?
Mostly like Hackers, Pagoda, like Tomato, if they're even still working these days. I'm not sure. Still not bankrupt, but there's tons of companies in Korea, I guess.
Yeah, most of those companies are still around. And I think the materials they produce have gotten better. I think Hackers and Pagoda produce slightly more accurate materials than they did back then. But anyway, so kind of what I wanted to bring you in here for was like to talk about how you approach preparation for the TOEFL test. So I thought what we would do is we would go through each of the 4 sections of the test, and I'll kind of ask you 2 questions. First up, I'm going to ask you, like, if someone came to you and said, I want to self-study, what approach should I take? And then the other question will be, what if somebody actually kind of hires you to work with them one-on-one or give them personal advice? What approach would you take in that case? Does that sound okay to you?
That really depends on the overall level of proficiency the student has right now and what score the person needs in what time frame. But as a general advice, like mostly people are aiming for like 100, right? Like when you're around your 60s level, if your total score is around 60, it means it's basically a 0 because it's like the bottom 86 or 90% of the whole score range, even though it seems like you got half right, it's not. So if that's the case, it means unless you improve your overall proficiency, you're going to stay around that range forever. So you get to study. So for reading, I would definitely recommend memorizing a lot of synonyms. Like I recommend Hacker's Vocabulary, but you know, there are probably other books out there.
That was actually a question. That was one of the big questions. So I want to actually stop you there so we can focus on that. Okay, so reading. Somebody comes in and they want to improve their reading score. They have in Korea these vocabulary books. I've actually got some behind me. I should have grabbed one, but it's just thousands of words, right? Hundreds or thousands of words, and they just go on and on and on, pages and pages of words. It seems to be that in Korea, the test preparation involves kind of like studying a lot of vocabulary. The books are for sale, people use them. I see people reading them on the subway. I see them when I go to the library. Do you recommend that studying a lot of vocabulary to get a good reading score?
Just one book is enough, I think. But before Hacker's Vocabulary, you do need to know like the basic words. If you think that is way too difficult, you need to have like, you know, other vocab books. But I haven't seen a book as good as Hackers for TOEFL.
Okay. So the Hackers Vocabulary book. I actually had a few people email me after the last chat, and they're like, where can I get Korean books? And I was like, I guess you can go to Korea. But yeah, so maybe like I'll look up the names of some of the more popular Hackers Vocabulary books. We'll share those with the audience. So that you say like that is useful then, studying like big vocabulary books. Very useful. I think it's
based on big data. Like if you know all the vocab there, which isn't even that much, you're like 80% okay for TOEFL vocab. You can get all the synonyms right. You can solve the reading listening questions without that much difficulty. So
really,
yeah,
that helps. Because that's a question, like a lot of people who teach in different countries, they don't like this approach. They say, it's a waste of time to study.
A lot of people say that I don't know, but like when I see like international school students, the reason why like not all of them, but like 90 to 80% of them like are just terrible at the reading session is because they never memorized vocabulary in their lives. And I was one of those students as well. Okay, I hated memorizing vocabulary. I still hate it to this day, which is why I didn't touch CRE or something like that. But still, right? I know it's a pain in the butt, but you really have to do it. It just changes the comprehension of the passage altogether. That's at least what I think, and what the results show as well. Yeah.
I wonder if that's a consequence of like maybe the education system that the kids in Korea are coming up in. Because I know, again, I work with a ton of people in Japan, and they also love to study these vocabulary lists. I believe the students I work with in China do as well. But if I were to say to somebody like, I don't know, like in a European country, yeah, I need you to study 2,000 words, no way. Not going to happen.
So for the reading session, to solve the questions, like the ET is kind of designed it so that you need to know how to paraphrase the words to solve them. So you need to know vocabulary to solve reading questions. And writing is a different story. Like you need to internalize the vocabulary by reading like, I don't know, hundreds of examples or listening to them in some other place. And that's how your overall skills improve. And your collocations, like which are words that you place together to make natural sentences, it'd be really weird if you just memorize vocabulary, which is what happens to a lot of students who study for the SAT. Like everything they say is weird, okay? But the funny thing is they do get 29/30s on TOEFL writing. Even though the collocations are all messed up, they're just terrible. This is what I said. Good collocations, perfect writing, sometimes get 28. These terrible essays get 29/30s. Like, I
Okay.
don't know what
So
to do.
I see that writing is a sore spot for you. We are going to get to the writing specifically. Like, actually,
Right.
that'll be the last one we talk about. A little bit more about reading, if
Right.
you'll agree.
Sorry for the-
So the vocabulary books is a strong recommendation from you. Okay. What about working through practice sets? Now, there are, like, across the ETS books they've published, I think there's 15 practice sets, like complete practice sets. And that's on the old version of the TOEFL. So that's a lot of reading material. Plus on the ETS website, I think there's 3 or 4 more sets. And then, you can purchase the TPO sets from like Digital Chosun or whatever, depending on the country you're in. Some of them just purchase it directly from ETS. Some teachers, probably myself included, really recommend going through a ton of practice reading sets. Is that something that you recommend?
Yes, but not too much. Because like,
Not too much. Sometimes I'm like, there's never too much. So what do you mean?
so like this happened to me as before as well. Because I as I mentioned before, I solved almost every single practice test in the market when I was studying for it. That's a terrible approach, I think.
Okay. Tell me
Yeah,
more.
because you kind of skim through, you
Mhm,
don't actually learn much, you just solve questions and just move on. But
mhm,
the amount of effort it takes for the ETS or other organizations to make a reading set is pretty high, I think. Like, it's really difficult to make questions, and they're actually quite well made, the passages. And even if you get about 80% of what they're saying, you get a guaranteed 30 all the time on reading.
mhm,
Just getting 80%, 85%. But what most people are getting is around like 26, 27. I think that's the baseline score that ETS gives, because that's the
mhm,
top 36 to like around 30%.
mhm,
Like, again, 27 means you did okay job. It doesn't mean
mhm.
you did a good job, okay?
Okay, well, some might
So
disagree, but okay.
top 40%, like, I don't know. I
Okay.
don't think that's a good job,
Well,
but anyhow, it's okay, right?
yeah,
So
it's okay.
if you get like 70% of what they're saying, all the obvious things right, then you get
Mhm,
26. Below
okay.
that means you don't have any idea what they're talking
Okay.
about. So
Well,
sorry for the drastic expressions, but you know,
makes
so
sense. So you don't want people skimming all these reading passages. I guess you want them paying more attention to the passages. So
right.
how can I properly use a practice reading set?
So when you
It's made
solve
by
it,
ETS, it's super accurate. How do I use it efficiently?
when you first solve it, just solve it like how you would naturally solve it under like test conditions.
Mhm,
But when you actually go through it again, okay, it's really important to go through it again, like
mhm.
multiple times.
Multiple times. That's key. Okay.
Okay, so you probably want to, right after solving it, like understand almost every single sentence and the vocabulary that they use as well, and
Mhm,
try to get the overall flow,
mhm,
like why this sentence exists. That's key.
mhm,
So if they mention a sentence, like what is the function of this sentence when you connect it to the previous sentence or the main topic? Is it
mhm,
an example, an explanation, something moving on to a different point, like something irrelevant, or
mhm,
is it to provide some background information to move on to another point or whatnot? There are these like functions of each sentence. And when I was solving it, like when I was a student, I didn't care at all.
mhm,
That's why there were fluctuations in my reading, like from 27 to 30.
mhm,
And even when I started teaching TOEFL, I didn't get it 100%.
mhm,
So again, like as I was continuously teaching the same material like multiple times,
mhm,
I started seeing those connections, and
mhm,
that's when my English improved a great deal. Like,
mhm.
so when I first got my 118 or 120s or whatnot, like it's nothing compared to like how I'm reading it right now.
Mhm.
But for some reason, ETS doesn't care about. Anyhow, that's how it goes.
Okay, so that's actually really good advice. And I think that like that's like super useful because again, a lot of people they just go through set after set after set. And there are quite a few sets that you can get for cheap and for free. But the idea
And,
that they should do them multiple times and understand what each sentence means, that's really useful. How about the question choices and the prompts? Is there a way to examine those efficiently?
I mean, there are only like 10 different question types, 11 or 10. So
Mhm,
I don't think that's much of a big deal as long as you know how to approach them.
mhm,
It's not the question type that's the issue, except for the summary questions, which are pretty
mhm,
hard. But the other ones, it's just a random chance of what questions are kind of hard or what are just
mhm.
easy.
Okay. But
That's what I think.
do you recommend that like the students study the incorrect answer choice? This I sometimes suggest, and I'm not sure if it's like super useful or not, but I'm like, you should pick out each incorrect answer choice and figure out why it is incorrect. Is that
Very
useful?
important.
Very
Very.
important. Okay.
Yeah, if you prove and disprove every single answer choice in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if there's
Okay.
usually like multiple reasons why an answer is wrong,
Yeah.
if you can pick out just one, it's just eliminated altogether.
Okay.
So it means if you get like one question wrong, it
Mhm.
means you prove the wrong answer and disprove the correct answer, meaning you got at least two things wrong. If you got one wrong,
Mhm.
and that doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint.
Mhm.
You messed up completely there, completely there.
Okay.
Unless they give you a really hard question, like a dirty question, where like the answer is just really weird.
Yeah.
Unless it's that case, then yeah.
Okay. I remember last time I took the test, I got a reading passage. I'll tell you, maybe I'm not allowed to say. It was about clocks of all things.
Okay.
And one of the questions, I must have spent about 5 minutes just staring at this question. Like I answered all the other ones. Probably I had half the time remaining because I didn't find them particularly challenging. I zoomed through and I must have spent at least 5 minutes or more. And it was just like a factual question, whatever, just staring at it. Like, what were you guys thinking when you designed this question? So sometimes you get those, I guess, what you called a dirty question.
Exactly.
It's not too much to dwell on. Okay, so I guess the summary questions at the end. I get a lot of people wondering about those. They're very challenging. They require everyone to like, read the whole passage to find the answers, and they're kind of weird. And time management is a nightmare. Any particular advice about dealing with those? Because I know you
So
did bring them up just a moment
for
ago.
any question, like just skip it.
Mhm.
It just write the number on a piece of
Mhm.
paper they give you or your chalkboard, I mean your whiteboard,
Mhm.
no. It's like
Mhm.
7, 11,
Mhm.
12, 14, 20, like just pass and
Mhm.
then click the report button on your test and you can just
Mhm.
go back to these questions, right?
Oh,
So
no,
just
Michael, actually, sorry to interrupt. What I meant was the final question on the test, that
I
last
know,
one.
that's how
Oh,
you
sorry, go
manage
on.
your time well, right?
Oh, okay, of course, pardon me.
Yeah. So if you just like what Michael did, if you for as a non-native speaker, if you just spend 5 minutes on one question, that means you screw up on everything else. Just skip it. There's like a 50 to 60% chance you get it right anyway. Just skip it. Okay.
Mhm.
And then like when you come to the summary question, like the ETS gives you terrible directions to solve the summary question, by the way. The sentence they give you, that's just basically useless, that one sentence there. So like the
Yeah.
title, you just screw it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you want to like combine like two paragraphs, usually 2 or 3 paragraphs, to make one sentence for the summary. So you
Yeah.
need to have this like logical flow sequence and kind of see the big picture, kind of see the forest but not the trees to solve
Okay.
them. And like there are strategies that I can explain in detail, but here like I don't have my board, so that's basically what I can say right now. And so basically you can just pick the main idea from one paragraph and maybe combine it with some of the details from that paragraph, or can combine like 2 or 3 main ideas from each paragraph and produce an answer. Or you can just bring out like not a main idea, but some important points within the paragraph, which is hard. Okay, just take that out, and that could be the answer as well.
Okay.
And every single time, when even if they include like minor details, if you have the main point, the main focus, it's still the answer.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's hard to sometimes tell the difference between like a minor detail and one of the major details they're looking for in that question. That's what everyone seems to struggle with.
Oh, then that's a comprehension issue. But anyhow,
It is, yeah.
but sometimes they do really dirty things. Like the whole thing is perfect except one preposition. Like that's dirty. Okay?
Yeah. And so that again, when I last took the test, that was what I noticed, that many of the incorrect answer choices were factually incorrect based on small kind of things like a preposition in the sentence. Yeah, or exactly like that. So they use a preposition or a plural, and then it's neither a main detail nor a minor detail. It's actually a factually incorrect detail.
Yeah, so that's just dirty. But at least like when I solved it recently, like 2 times, like the summary questions were very easy. Like was very clean, which is good.
Okay, that's great. So I guess that what we've discussed is exactly what probably most of the viewers want, is like approaches they can use in their own preparation.
Right.
What do you do? I don't want you to give away all your kind of trade secrets, but if you're actually working with someone as a client one-on-one, what kind of things do you do with them as a tutor to help them prepare for the reading section?
I mean, usually I explain everything, like the approaches, the the way to read stuff, everything, like in my first class,
Mhm,
but or a few classes if they're pretty weak on reading.
mhm,
But these days I just film like an online lecture and
mhm.
just make them watch it.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Now, it sounds like a lot of it then becomes self-study for the student. They're kind of taking responsibility for their own learning, and they're doing a lot of it on their own.
Yes, the test is actually very well made. It does improve your proficiency a lot, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, there are some issues. It's a good test.
Yeah, okay, I like that. And I guess what I really like, what I really want to take away from this part of the conversation is that a student should not spend just like 10 minutes on a reading set or a reading
Oh,
passage.
I want to mention this.
On the real test, no, but I mean like on the real test, 10, 12 minutes, whatever. But in their preparation, they're going to get a reading set and they might spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours just studying that one passage in the questions, right?
Yeah, before I was a little overkill, but yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And
So they
oh,
dive in.
so the thing I want to mention even before was this. There are some students I know who has solved literally like every single book out there, but they're still getting like 23 on reading.
Mhm.
Or there are people like who study reading for like 6 months, they're getting like 19 or something, right?
Yeah.
And when I explain to them these logical sequence and the stuff, they just
Mhm.
prove immediately, like in a few days. Like
Yeah.
they've been wasting their time. Like
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, right? And and don't skim for TOEFL reading
Mhm.
because if you think about it, the word count is like one sheet of like A4 paper.
Mhm.
Like it's not even that long. It
Mhm.
shouldn't take you 18 minutes to just read one page
Mhm. Okay.
material.
Well, then
Yeah.
let's get back to an important question, because the common advice that people seem to give about reading is a little bit different than what you said, is to skim. So before the student starts answering the questions on test day, they get the reading. How much time do you think they should spend on that reading before they even look at the questions?
I recommend reading one paragraph first and solving like associated questions, moving on
Okay.
to another paragraph, solving it, another paragraph, solving it, and even if they don't have a question for the paragraph, still read the paragraph though, and then move
Okay.
on to the next paragraph to solve it. Like that's faster, I think.
Okay. Okay. So they're
Don't
doing
read
the
the whole thing.
paragraph and the questions related to it, and then they move on to the next one.
Right. If you read the whole
Okay.
text first, you get confused and you forget stuff. So I don't think that's sufficient.
Okay,
It's
so
really just
they really
mathematical.
shouldn't read the text first. They should get right to the questions. Okay,
No,
that's
no,
a
no, no,
pretty
no.
stand.
Read the paragraph first. Paragraph
Yes.
first,
Yeah.
then the questions. Right.
Okay,
Don't
so
read
the
the
paragraph and
questions
the
before
questions.
the
Yeah.
paragraph. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's kind of what a lot of people recommend. Now, the last part of reading is this is something that is probably something. It's a less efficient use of time. I always say to people, in addition to your TOEFL studying, I want you reading extensively. I want you reading like Science News Magazine, History Today, maybe National Geographic if it's good this month. I want you reading stuff that's kind of like the TOEFL, just sort of in your free time on the bus, on the subway. Is that useful, or is that sort of just me trying to feel like I'm a serious teacher?
It is useful, but most kids don't have time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I don't think they have time for that. And usually the articles are a bit harder than TOEFL or around the same level of difficulty.
Hmm.
So struggling with TOEFL, they will struggle with that anyway. So they
Hmm.
won't have that much motivation to read in the first place.
Okay, so it's not
Yeah,
something you're super enthusiastic about.
I mean, yeah, I love reading. And I improved a great deal by reading like hundreds of books, but
Hmm.
I don't recommend that to my students when they're at least studying for TOEFL.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
And maybe using GPT can make it easier. Like you can just copy and paste the TOEFL passages onto ChatGPT and say,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm an English learner." Like make your own prompt, right?
Hmm.
Make it into like a 10th grade level, ninth grade level, sixth grade level, whatever, and they'll make it easier. And then
Yeah.
you can study using GPT.
Yeah, I've done some fun videos about that where you put in the TOEFL article, you extract the vocabulary, and then you give the GPT the vocabulary and say, write me an article about whatever using these words and make it sound like a freshman university textbook. It's kind of a fun thing to do.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go on.
You can just have GPT like pick out vocabulary that you don't want to search for. If you're too lazy to, it's just for words that seem difficult, just give me a definition, and they just give you everything. So
yeah, I've done that. It's very, very handy, and that's something. If I had a bit more time, I would probably be doing a lot more of that. But the time escapes me. Going to talk about listening.
Sure.
I discuss this with experienced teachers quite often, and they often say to me, yeah, nobody has any idea how to teach TOEFL listening. It's sort of a black hole that there's very little like good material because it's hard to make because you got to record stuff. There's not much on YouTube about how to get a good listening score. How do you approach it?
So there are two types of people. The first type is who are already good at listening. Okay, usually if you live abroad, your listening is, of course, good, right? So you don't need to study for listening. If your reading scores improve, if you can prove and disprove the answer choices, your listening becomes 29, 30 immediately. For international students who have issues with connected speech or intonation patterns and so on, then it's a very hard thing to do, but it takes around like 1.5 months or 2 months to improve your listening skills, like properly.
Just to improve.
To the point you get like 25 or so.
Okay.
From like 16.
So this is not a fast thing.
Yeah, it takes time. But there are very fast learners, like occasionally, but usually I'm just talking about the average. And what I recommend is dictation and shadowing.
Okay. Tell me more.
It doesn't have to be TOEFL. It can be like any YouTube video that you find interesting. It can be Netflix series, but I do recommend science videos like, the YouTube channels In a Nutshell, Minute Earth. What else? It's Okay to Be Smart. I think you changed the name, but so these videos are okay. I'll leave a link. Okay, so these channels are really like high quality channels and very fun as well, and they do discuss a lot of the TOEFL related stuff. Like 80 to 90% of stuff they discuss is TOEFL related. So you can accustom yourself to the content, all the while learning listening. So that's good. So you listen to like a sentence, or if the sentence is too long, like make it like half a sentence or at the end of a transition or an and or not. Right? Cut it there, and then start writing it. You can type or write, and then you probably got like 10% or 20% of it only. So go back, using the same thing again and again and again and again until you actually think you got it right, and then look at the script, right? Compare and contrast, and listen to the conversation or lecture again, and then this is what it sounds like, right? And then you kind of now get that part, and you do the whole thing. Like seriously, a 3-minute video can take like 2 hours to do for beginners. So if you do this, then you kind of get accustomed to the collocations, the connected speech, and so on. And then you go back and see if you can listen to the whole thing, the entire thing, without referring to your notes. And again, there will be, of course, like as a learner, that you only get like 80 to 90%, but that's good enough. And then go back and do the same thing at 1.25 the speed. Okay.
That was what I was going to ask about, speed listening.
Right. And you do the whole thing again, right? See if you can hear it. And if not, then look, you don't have to do the whole thing again, but just, since it's just too much work, just put turn the captions on, right? Watch the whole thing with the captions, get used to it, go back, turn the captions off, see if you can get it. If you do it again at 1.5 the speed, right? And see if you can get that. And if you're really like into improving your skills, and if the video is not that fast, 1.75 will be around the max. If you do that and come back to 1.0, it's like freaking easy. Like, it's like so cool, like it just feels stupid. And then once you feel stupid and you can listen to everything, then do shadowing. So you want to copy the person in terms of the intonation, like the pace, like how he just combines like these phrases together. Like nobody will speak like this, they'll speak like this, right? And if you know the intonation patterns, like which is another story, and which parts are stressed or not, then it becomes easier. Especially they need to know the difference between function words and content words. So the function words, like grammar stuff like the or and, but, or in, or from, and so on, right? These words are very difficult to hear.
Mhm.
For example, like, well, I want a glass of water. They don't speak like that. I want a glass of water. I want a glass of water. So you have to get used to this kind of connected speech and stress patterns. And once
Mhm.
you get the overall concept, then you can start listening and understanding. Again, this comes naturally for people who lived abroad or learn English from a young age. But as a learner, like non-native learner in their 30s or 20s, this will be very challenging.
Okay. So yeah, and could you do this with like a TOEFL listening, actual TOEFL listening passage?
Oh,
You recommended using websites, but would you also do this with the actual TOEFL material?
Oh, I don't use it because I mean you can use it if you want, but sometimes like if you change the speed, then the sound becomes a bit weird. Like
Okay.
the sound does not adjust. So they have these squeaky voices.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of boring as well. So you can use TOEFL, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
why not make it fun? But
Okay.
yeah, both materials are fine.
That's great. And what I love here is that once again, you're taking like a 3-minute passage and you're telling the student, spend hours on this, hours.
Yeah.
And that's kind of contrary to what a lot of people do, is they just get their sets and then they just zoom through them and
if
then
they're
they move
good,
on.
then you don't have to study for listening at all. Like it's stupid easy. Yeah, but except for the 30 questions, of course. But
Yeah.
if you have issues with listening, then this is like literally the only way you can fix it, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And well, I mean, it sounds like it's intensive, detailed studying. Now, does this also work for the listening passages that are conversations? Or do you have
I mean, it's just improving your general like comprehension of the language.
Mhm.
Like seriously, when like for example, if I listen to Japanese or something, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Like I won't know the sound values, even if I might be able to read some of the words. Like if I learn it, like
Mhm.
my version of my Japanese will be different from how a native speaker would say it.
Mhm.
It's like it doesn't match at all.
Mhm.
So that's why people have these weird accents or things when they speak in another language.
Mhm. Now, does this shadowing technique, does that help them as well in the speaking section later on?
Yes, it helps them as well.
Okay.
But there's a limit to it though. But at least they can kind of wait, by the way, for shadowing, you have to record yourself doing it and
Mhm.
compare yourself, your version with the native speaker's version. And
Mhm.
and it'll probably suck. It will be like terrible. Okay.
Mhm.
And people have these weird voice changes when they transition to another language. It's
Yeah.
because like languages have different sound values, like it's called a format.
Mhm.
But like Japanese people speak like, like the guys are like, "Hi, sumimasen," and the girls are like, "Hi, arigato," right? They have these different sound values, and English is a bit deep,
Mhm.
so you need to adjust yourself to that as well. So
Okay.
mostly, I'm not sure why, but they kind of sound like this all the time when they speak in English. Okay, that weird like squeaky friction sound. You want to get rid of that, which is hard.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just
And
never mind.
we'll get to the speaking section specifically. Actually, we're going to get to that right now because that's the next part of the test. So I guess we've already sort of begun our discussion of the speaking section. Now, so shadowing, that's something I always recommend. And that's something I always like, that's something that like I tell to my students, right? Because I'm not doing shadowing with them live in the lessons I teach live. And it's something I sort of give them as like a homework thing. And I'm not always sure they do it. So I think you have some, pardon
I
me?
just make them like send me the files if they do it, like like the
Ah,
written version of them with the scribbles on,
yeah.
red stuff they got wrong, so I can tell like what they're getting and not,
Okay.
and also their recorded file as well, like a perfect version of it. So you can kind
Yeah.
of redo the versions, like
Mhm.
in the middle of a sentence when you're recording, you can kind of
Mhm.
using Apple or Samsung phones, you can just go back and re-record that part and make the whole file like just one decent recording.
Mhm.
So I just need to listen to one file, not sentence by sentence.
How
So
likely are you to get buy-in from the test takers on this? Because it sounds like you are asking them to do a lot. Are
but
they okay with that?
that's the only way out. So
Yeah.
like if I feel that it's
Not
like
everyone
mission,
agrees.
if I feel, I mean, like, there are other ways, of course. Like
Mhm.
I don't have like a PhD in education or something. I just kind of I just like studying, like I guess how learning works,
Mhm.
personal experience, and all these things.
Okay.
Just trying different
Yeah.
needs.
Well, I mean, oh yeah, and I totally agree that buy-in from the student pays off and that they need to spend hours and hours. It's a hard test. Language learning is hard. Everything's hard. It's difficult. You got to work at it. But I mean, sometimes like I get contacted by just random people from the internet and they're like, I gotta get my score in a week. It's like, oh,
I mean, that
geez.
is possible. Like, for example, like some of my students, like if they're good, I can make them get over 117 in
Mhm.
like 1 or 2 lessons.
Mhm.
That's possible. But
Yeah.
if you suck at it, it's impossible. It's like no
Mhm.
way. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, how, but I mean, do you get students who are like, are you crazy? You want me to study 2 hours every day? Is that a reaction that you sometimes get?
2 hours is like very normal, I think. That's like the
Okay.
bare minimum requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, what I'm trying to like convey to listeners is that you really want to put in the work, the hard
Because,
work.
like for example, like if you're studying SAT, like I mean, the same thing, right? These days, like TOEFL reading is almost as difficult as SAT because SAT became dumber, I think. So anyhow, but besides that, right? And you expect yourself to get like a perfect score in the SAT, like with a few hours of effort. Like, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
Like even like U.S. citizens, like Americans, like the average score is like I don't know, like 200 or something on the
Mhm.
SAT. I don't know, but anyhow, seriously,
Yeah. It takes
no.
work. It takes work. Okay.
Speaking is even harder. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about speaking. So what, I guess generally then, what is your approach? You've already talked about a lot of things, but if you could kind of put it in a nutshell, what's your general approach to preparation for the speaking section of the test?
So basically, if the student needs like only a 90 or 95 or 100,
Mhm.
or maybe not 100, but like 90 or lower, I say screw the
Mhm.
speak because they're gonna give you like a 15 to 90, 19, no matter
Mhm.
how bad you are.
Mm.
The bottom like 90%, 90 to like 80%, 82%. If you
Mhm.
look at the score like data.
Yeah.
So basically, if you don't give up, they give you 15 to 19, and yeah, just get the score, right? Screw it.
That's a common, it sounds silly, but I get that a lot. And they say, students will say, people from my country, it's impossible for us to get more than 22 points in the speaking section. So we don't even try, which breaks my heart. But I guess if the target score is not super high, then maybe that's okay. But
And it literally is like I think the limit is like 23 to most people, at least in Korea. Like
yeah,
no matter how hard they try, like 95% will fail to get over 23.
yeah, that's what they say. That's I get that a lot from students in Korea and I guess I'll say Japan and yeah,
I
they
guess it's
just
designed for all the test.
well, I mean, I think there's reasons for that, which is probably beyond the scope of our discussion. But
Yeah.
okay, so if somebody does want to study the speaking section, like legitimately and honestly, what is the general approach that you take there?
So if they really want to study, like not just the scores, like
Yeah, I
they
mean,
have
if they
unlimited.
want to get a good, if they want to get the best possible speaking score, we'll say for
So
them.
you do need a tutor for speaking, like
Mhm.
you can do international exchange student programs, or you know, I'm not sure what they're called, but you teach them another language and they teach you their language.
A language exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, language exchange, right? Those programs might help if your school has one, or I don't know, you can talk to random people online maybe if they're willing to talk to you, but not perverts, hopefully. And um, what else? Or just hire like a Filipino teacher or Indian teachers. I'm not sure, but someone like who's good at speaking, but doesn't require that much pay. That's a very good way to learn, I think.
Yeah, and that's something again, that's something I always tell the students. I'm like, you can't pay me for conversation because that's not a
Yeah.
good use of your money, right? And I say ETS has a partnership with Preply now, which is pretty cool. Cambly is another one, like I. There used to be others. And I'm like, just go to those, find a native speaking teacher. Don't get TOEFL lessons from them because they probably don't know what they're talking about. Just find somebody who you can talk to for like an hour a
Hmm.
week, an hour a day. They'll charge you like $15.
Yeah.
And just talk and talk and talk, and that'll really improve
Wait,
your
native speakers?
pronunciation, your fluency. But again, it's hard. They don't people like a lot of students are like, I don't want to do that.
Wait,
And
native
then
speakers charge $15? Really?
yeah, it's a tough
Really
economy, my
cheap?
friend. You
Really?
can, I mean, not all of them, but yeah, you can find native speakers from the US for like
That's
15,
that's
maybe $20 an
awesome.
hour. Yeah.
I want a link. I
I'll
would
set you
recommend
up.
that to every student that I know. Okay.
Yeah. It's actually come to such a point where I'm like, I'm kind of desperate for these test takers to get experience just talking. I'm like, okay, fine. I will reduce my rate. I'll charge you a very low price, and we can do that because I just want you to get
That's
conversational
really nice to hear.
practice because
Yeah.
it's so useful. So again, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So that's something you think is really important.
Yes, it doesn't have to be TOEFL speaking. Like it doesn't matter at all.
Mhm,
Just improve your overall fluency. It goes up instantly. But of course,
mhm.
you do need to know the structure, the skills, and so on. But only when your proficiency is high, or
Yeah.
up to a decent point.
And you can learn the structures of the questions in a YouTube video, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're
I
not
mean,
too
not
complicated.
all there, like all the stuff that I would usually teach students to, kind of make it easier. But yeah, well, just general stuff is there, so use it. Why not?
Mhm,
But it's a gradual process, like, and it really depends on the learner. For example,
mhm,
like there are like quick learners,
mhm.
but there are like, very smart people like doctors or like lawyer level, like these kind of people who still are terrible at speaking. So it's not an intelligence issue; it's just a language acquisition issue. And usually,
Definitely.
women are better than men for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, I guess the research is showing that women
Mm.
kind of pick up languages maybe a little bit better than men for some reason. I think the TOEFL score data kind of speaks to that as well. Okay,
And also,
so
yeah,
no, sorry, go on,
intonation.
please.
Like the guys have this weird, like as I mentioned before, like vocal fries, like
Mhm,
these sounds. They make those sounds a lot more, and the
mhm,
women, even if they make it don't sound as weird, I
mhm.
think that's one of the reasons why like women can get like 26, 25 on speaking, whereas men usually get 23.
Okay, that's some data. I might kind of dig into that. I wonder if the data kind of speaks to that as well. Um, Interesting. AI tools for speaking. I've been using a lot of AI tools. Um, are you big on those?
I mean, since I'm not like a language learner, I guess,
Mhm,
like at a beginner level, I can't say for sure if it's helping that much. But
mhm,
if you have like a good AI, I think it's gonna be like the best teacher ever.
mhm. Well, I've been using some of the SpeechRater implementations. Edigree used to have one. Sadly, they don't anymore. My Speaking Score has one. It's good. It costs money. Um, it's
I don't know if that
almost
helps.
yeah. I like how it identifies things like speaking rate and the amount of pauses and the presence of pauses. These are things you can do manually as well. But I find it's nice to have them automated.
I was actually referring to something like that actually teaches you a language. Like
Okay.
I'm not really sure if this works, but Duolingo maybe, or
Mhm,
the app test,
mhm.
or app called Speak in Korea that uses GPT-4.
Hmm,
I'm not sure how they do it, but I haven't used it. But
okay.
they
Sorry, I think that microphone cut out. What's the name of the app you just referred to?
speak. It's a
Speak.
Korean,
Okay.
so I'm
I'll
not
look
sure
for
if
that.
language learners can use it. And
Oh,
again, I'm sure there are other like language learning applications out there that can help you a lot.
mhm,
And yeah, why not use it? But
okay.
need like decent feedback from a real like native speaker or a person who can speak English
Mhm.
to and again, one more thing. People like don't give harsh comments. They're just so nice, and
Yeah.
that's why their students are not improving. Like if they suck on something, just say they suck. This you need to fix this, and this. Okay, again, some people get hurt. Some people cry. Okay, if
Mhm.
it piles up. But if they want to improve, then I think that's the best way. Rather than saying, "Oh, you're so good. I see no problem," because in reality, like they suck. You need
Yeah.
to improve. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess sometimes tough love. And actually, like I remember when I started kind of teaching, I was probably very, very nice. And learners would say, you got to be more critical.
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's what they wanted. That's what they were paying me to give them, right? Is criticism.
I mean, you don't have to be a dick about criticism, but you do have to critique. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You want to just point out specifically. And I also, I guess you ought to make it very clear. It's like I'm criticizing you in terms of how the TOEFL is scored. Because you got to be clear. Listen, I can understand you very well. You speak very clearly. You would have no problem communicating in life,
Mm.
but on the TOEFL, it's a weird little beast, and these are the things you have to change.
Right. Though like
Um,
plus, I do think you have to at least sound close to a native speaker. So
mhm,
I think it was designed the speaking session. Like once you go above 23, I think the test itself is very well made.
yeah.
But and design flaw is like that you just the score just gets stuck and people will not feel motivated to study at all. Like,
Mhm,
they should have
yeah.
just cut down on the other requirement. I mean, like they shouldn't just give 15 to like 19 like randomly to everybody.
Yeah.
Start from like 0. I think they will at least see some progress. They will feel more motivated.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like there's not like a range. Like I very rarely see scores below like 15, right? I see 16, 17. And then there's a big sort of log jam at like 16 to 22, right? So it's harder for people to see progress. And as I mentioned just before we started recording, a lot of the people that seek out speaking tutoring are pharmacists, and they need to get their pharmacy license in the US, and they need a score of 26, which is hard. And then they get stuck at like 24, right?
Which is
Again and again and again. They take the test like 20 times. 24, 24, 24, 24, 24. And then when they get 26, it's like, hallelujah. But it almost seems kind of random, like, oh, got it.
yeah. Sometimes like when they do a terrible job, they still get a good score. I don't know why. Like
Yeah.
it's them sometimes, but like
Yeah.
5%,
Yeah.
I don't
Um,
know.
okay, let's kind of move on a little bit to writing. This is the end of the test. This will be the last part of our conversation. What's your general approach to the writing section and teaching that?
Wait, but before I forget, like continue on from the speaking session. Like if
Mhm.
the natives or the Filipinos or whatnot, if they can teach you speaking, they can also teach you writing. Get tons of
Okay,
feedback. It doesn't have to be TOEFL.
yeah.
Get feedback, like that's the best. Just get it. Take as many classes as possible. Just
Sorry,
normal.
sorry. Let's get back up a little bit because I was sort of in writing mode. So you're saying you're recommending like online tutoring with teachers from the Philippines who is actually a very has a big kind of teaching sector, and you're saying get feedback first for speaking or for writing or for both.
Both.
Sorry, for both. Okay.
Oh, my connection isn't good right now.
Connection's kind of dropping out a little bit.
Okay. Anyhow, so as I said, take as many classes as possible from those teachers.
Mhm,
And improve on your writing.
mhm. Okay, so you're saying produce essays and discussion responses and get feedback.
Doesn't even have to be TOEFL. It could be anything. It could be your school homework, whatnot. Like, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure, or a summary of a YouTube video. Just get feedback.
Yeah, that's a big part of what I do. I think the majority of the teaching I do for TOEFL is writing, and it's people give me writing, I give them feedback. They give me writing, I give them feedback. And the most successful ones, the most successful students are the ones who produce like 20, 40, 60, 100 pieces of writing, and then I give them feedback on all of them.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And so again, is that something that you do with your students for writing as well?
You need writing classes, yeah, but if they all 4 sessions with me, then or at least like not the speaking, maybe 3 sessions. If I see no hope in speaking, I just say screw it. So if that's the case, then I won't have time to teach them everything. Like usually I
Mhm.
do like 2 to 6 hours of class per week for per student. So I can't revise that many essays. Yeah, but yeah, that's very good. You can do that with another teacher, and the more you write, the better. And as long as you get feedback,
Mhm.
you just write and never receive feedback. Like what I got before, like when I was a student, that doesn't help much. It will take you a long time to improve.
What kind of feedback do they need?
The grammar feedback or collocation issues, like weird, awkward sentences, expressions.
Unidiomatic, as ETS would call them.
Yes. And again, that takes a lot of time to fix. And like structural issues, like sometimes they don't do a good job with the logical sequence, like proving their point, not being specific. That's a big deal. Like different cultures have different ways of specifying their essays or their piece of writing,
Mhm.
and certain like cultures tend to be very specific. It's called a direct language, and you want to be as specific as possible.
Okay.
But like degrees feels weird to an Asian. Like be super specific. Then it will sound good. Please give examples.
Okay, so the question I was going to ask, I think you just answered, is that how do you achieve specificity in this writing? Now,
Given
this is less of an issue because the independent essay task was just eliminated. However, I think the academic discussion task is requiring specificity as well. So how do you achieve specificity there?
I just revise people's essays. Like
Mhm.
they don't give explanations or examples, and just give vague statements and just move on and explain the
Okay.
between the Western world and Asia, and and understand that the culture really helps you a lot, rather than just try to learn only the language.
Okay. I like that. It's an interesting approach. It's not something I've thought about. So, but are you looking then, so you don't want vague explanations, specific examples of things, supporting examples is maybe what you're talking about. Okay. The controversial question is references to templates. Templates in the writing and the speaking sections are pretty big in Korea. I know that they're also big in a few other countries. And by a template, I mean the students memorizing some amount of text before they go into the test center. And on the basic level, a template is something like a thesis statement that begins with, in my opinion, and then a supporting argument that has something like, for example, I remember when, and then a conclusion that begins with something like, to wrap it all up. So that's the basic kind of template where you're memorizing a little bit of this content. A bigger template memorizes more. Kind of controversial. Some students really kind of swear by them and they're like, man, I use this template to got a high score. Kind of controversial with teachers as well. A lot of tutors are like, man, don't use any templates. It's so bad. It's the worst thing you can do. Where do you stand on this kind of approach?
Templates, and it's not even a big deal. Like, it's just a stupid template. It's just a few
Hmm.
words. It's just a structure. The
Okay.
real crazy templates, I mean, not crazy, but useful/weird templates are the ones that are kind of a thing in Korea, I guess. I'm not sure if they have one for the new essay yet,
Hmm.
but they make you memorize like 400 words for the previous independent essays,
Hmm.
and you have 20 different samples.
Hmm.
Like, you can kind of like fit in that kind of like 400-word essay into that specific question. Like,
Hmm.
it works every single time, and then that's like a crazy template. But like, if you're desperate, maybe. And memorizing, I mean, I used to hate that stuff. Like, I still think it's a little bit stupid. But like, if you're desperate, if you need scores instantly, and if you have issues with your language and collocations, why not? And plus, even if you memorize them, like, you do memorize the collocations together, right?
Hmm.
So improve on a certain level as well. So I'm actually for templates, even the super crazy long memorized ones. But regardless, like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Hmm.
writing, it's just a structure. It's fine.
Yeah.
Everything else, your own skill.
Okay. So that's a good question. We'll kind of wrap it up in a moment. Did you have any specific comments about how people can prepare for the integrated essay? Because that requires more than just writing. Any thoughts about preparing for that very difficult task?
So the sessions are all connected, right?
Hmm.
So I mentioned from the beginning, you should start reading, listening first, and especially your listening skills are all about just literally getting um the text, understanding listening conversations or lectures. So if you can actually listen to it, then integrated essay becomes pretty easy.
Hmm.
And it's easy. It's slower. Like, the integrated speaking and writing is a bit slower than the listening session, because the ETS wants to give you time to like take notes, and they repeat things multiple times, and the expressions they use are a bit easier as well. So once you get the hang of listening, then it doesn't become a big deal. Though getting a full point can be quite hard. It's easy to get like a 4.0, which is like 25 or so,
Yeah.
and the AI score then is like 26, 27 on the integrated. Like, if it's like a score like that, and
Mm.
if you get a decent score in the independent essay or the new academic discussion essay, it's like a 27, 8. So not bad. So usually, I think, like, with enough effort, getting a 25 to 28 range is possible. But
Okay.
anything above is like, again, you need to be freaking good. Need some luck.
Yeah, sometimes it does seem a little bit random. Do you have a specific word count you recommend for the integrated task?
No, but usually you do. Like, if you write all the details that you need to write, it usually averages to about, I don't know, like 300 words, 280 to 320. I think.
That's exactly what I recommend. 280 to 300.
40.
Sorry, the microphone cut out there a minute.
The passage is really long.
Yeah.
It could be like 340 to 360, but usually like 280 to 320 is
Okay.
enough.
I think so. And I won't even ask you about the recommended word count for the discussion task because that's all kind of in flux. We'll see. Last question. One of the things I always tell the students to do for their self-prep homework is to study grammar. And I'll even just recommend English Grammar in Use, which is my favorite book. And I'll just give them a list of chapters to study sort of in their own time. You recommend grammar study kind of outside the TOEFL world?
I mean, if they're like a super beginner, maybe, but I'm not a big fan of grammar.
Not a
Like,
big fan of like grammar study
I
specifically.
that stuff, and plus, I think you can naturally learn it if you understand the patterns in English. Like, I just divide it into like I don't know, like 10 different patterns.
Yeah.
That can help them understand the passage, like everything mentioned there. So that's what I usually, without teaching them a lot of grammar. Like
What
any
kind of
more, sorry for the any whatever. Sorry.
It's okay. What kind of patterns are you kind of teaching them?
Like secret.
Okay. Well, we'll hold off on that for another conversation. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the test and probably about to the end of the conversation. That was really, really useful. I was taking notes, and I think I'm going to go back and watch this video so I can modify the lessons I give kind of based on some of the things you said. It's very, very useful.
Your opinion as well, like on how you teach and what other teachers teach as well. So maybe leave them in the comments.
Yeah, again, if anyone, I'm sure a lot of people probably would disagree with some of the stuff that you've said and that I've said. I hope they'll leave a comment down below and they'll kind of share their own approaches. And in the weeks ahead, I'm going to talk to some teachers from other countries and kind of get their perspectives on all of this. I think if people in the audience are very curious, I think I'm going to have an interview with someone from teaching in China in a few days. And kind of what I want to do is I want to talk to non-native English speakers teaching in their own countries and kind of see their approach. Because as I've said, I think the best TOEFL teachers are non-natives. And I think the data speaks to that.
Someone who would be better at teaching like pure non-native speakers would be like someone who started from the very beginning in Korea without English in the States at all. But again, that's a very rare breed to be teaching, I think. And if they are, they won't have like a high score usually. But perhaps those teachers, even though they don't get 120s or whatnot, could be better in terms of teaching grammar, at least. Although the teachers could be weird, but at least for grammar, there will be better teachers.
Possibly, in my experience, better at almost everything. Not always the case, but I think just some of the best people I know in this business are non-native speakers. I don't know. That's kind of beyond the scope of our discussion, and we'll see. Because yeah, I've got a good friend of mine who's teaching in China, and China is the biggest market for the TOEFL. I think possibly India, but maybe China, and we'll see kind of what his thoughts are on that. Anyways, I guess I will leave it at that. But again, thanks so much for hopping into the channel. And I hope we can do another one of these probably in a few months. And maybe we can respond to some of the comments.
Okay, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.